Genesis chapter 2, I'll start in verse 15. Yahweh God took the man and put him in a garden called Eden to work in it and keep it. And Yahweh God commanded the man, saying, okay, this is a command, you guys. He said, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden. Oh, just stop right there. You may surely eat of every tree of the garden. Do you see, if you take a Bible verse out of the Bible and you make a doctrine out of that verse, you could teach something so corrupt right here, it would mess up the entire Bible. Just taking this one verse out of context, because you take it out of the context. You single it out like what we were doing as Jehovah's Witnesses. We were taught to do these things. You take these Bible verses and you make doctrines out of them. So let's make a doctrine real quick out of this. I'll demonstrate a thing that religion would do, right? I just said Jehovah's Witnesses because that's the one I'm familiar with, because I was in it for 30 years, born and raised. So let's make a doctrine out of this Bible verse. Ready? Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. And Yahweh God commanded the man, saying, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden. By the way, in the midst of the garden, it says there is the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And if you can eat of every tree that's in that garden, then they could eat. Okay. I command you. You may surely eat of every tree of the garden. Well, Yahweh commanded that I may. I can make the choice. It says I may. He didn't say you have to, but he said you may eat of every tree of the garden. So that must mean the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He said I can choose it. So I'll make the choice. And then you could say, Yahweh gave the man the choice. He gave him free will, because everybody used that word free will. Free will. God gave us free will. Well, I appreciate that you say that, but is that in the Bible? Is free will in the Bible? Well, yes, you can find the word free will. You can find the word F-R-E-E-W-I-L-L. Of course, in Hebrew, it's not spelled that way. We'll get into that. He said, you may. That gives you a choice. You may surely, meaning absolutely. Do you know the Hebrew word for surely? Do you know what it means? For us, it means absolutely. But in Hebrew, it's the word akal. It means eat freely. Meaning you don't have to pay for it, and you can have as much as you want. It's free, and you can eat as much as you want. Eat freely, partake all day. Adam and Eve didn't have to worry about calories and such. So that means that they can pull fruit off of any tree. And every tree, you know how they say these trees all have, they all kind of connect to each other, the root system and all that. I think they shared that in the movie, what was that called? Avatar, you know. So let's say that here's the tree of life in the center, and you also have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life, but there's two trees in the midst, and this is important. You can eat freely of any tree. You may surely eat of every tree of the garden, which means you may eat freely. Enjoy, have it all. And if you take that Bible verse you can make a doctrine out of it and say, see, they can eat the knowledge of good and evil. It was their choice. Hold on. They did make a choice. But if you take this out, you could out of the Bible and take verse 16, just say, Yahweh commanded the man, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, and you take that Bible verse and you put it right here, you just set it down, and then you make a whole doctrine out of it. You could blame Yahweh. You could say it's his fault that they ate, because he said in verse 16 of Genesis chapter 2, you may surely, or you may eat freely of every tree of the garden. The end. He's the one that said it. So what? They go to the knowledge of good and evil tree, they eat it, and now they get punished for it when he said they could eat freely? You may. That was the choice, but here it is. That's not a period at the end of that sentence in verse 16. It's a comma. So after the comma, it says the word but. Oh. As in, wait a minute. Hold on. Don't go too far with this yet, because there's something else I have to say about this. And he says, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat. That is a command. There's no choice. He didn't say choose. You know, there's scriptures that say choose life, choose death. I want you to choose life. But that doesn't apply here. That doesn't apply here. This is before all that. This is a command to Adam and Eve. But of the tree of, in Hebrew, the tree of Da'ath, D-A-A-T-H. There's a reason that in English we have a word called D-E-A-T-H. There's a clue in there for you. The tree of Da'ath. That's knowledge. That's what knowledge is, Da'ath. What's that mean? Well, if you think about it today, it's the tree of death. And it surely makes sense because of what he's about to continue on saying. But of the tree of death, Da'ath, so this death tree has fruit. And a tree is known by its fruit. What is the fruit? It's the good of evil, good and evil. That's the knowledge of good and evil. The Da'ath of good and evil. And from that tree you shall not eat. That's a command. For, or because, in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. No. I thought he ate the fruit. I thought they both ate the fruit and they were still alive. They went and hid in the garden. They were ashamed. They were naked. They were afraid. Right? And then, you know, they get sent out of the garden later on and they're still alive. Well, in Hebrew, this is what it says. In the day that you eat of it, you shall muth tamuth. You shall muth tamuth. Muth means to die. And tamuth means you shall die. Because tamuth comes from muth. You shall die. So to die, you shall die. So we have dying in there twice. Here's how it would translate. Here's the proper way to translate this verse. And I wish the translators would have said this. In the day that you eat of that tree, the process of dying shall begin. Or the process of dying takes place because death entered in, and it's a process. It's like when your tire in your vehicle is full of air. You take a needle, you push that needle all the way in there. Even though it's a tiny little hole, you just started the process of the air leaking out of the tire. So then the tire slowly does till it's flat, gone. That's what happened the day they partook of that fruit. Death began. It's like you have Adam and Eve, two beautiful flowers, and you pluck those flowers from the source, which was life. And you pull those flowers, and you bring them home, and you put them in a vase, and they look so beautiful. And everybody gets to see your flowers and how wonderful, and they smell so good. But you brought death into your home. Do you understand it? Let's just be real. I'm not condemning you. I'm not saying you shouldn't pick flowers because this is the facts. This is the truth. You disconnected it. You disconnected them from the source, which was life. They were ripped up from life and used as a decoration. But the day that you pulled them from life, they died that day, although they didn't just wither away immediately in your fingers, but the process of dying had begun. And that is what happened to both Adam and his wife Eve. The process of dying had begun. In fact, when she picked the fruit off of the tree, it wasn't the life tree. And if they could eat of all those other trees, when you pick the fruit off of all of the other trees that they could freely eat from, well, those trees must have been connected to the source called life. So there was never death in their hand. Do you understand? Because once you pick the fruit off of the tree, it begins the process of dying because it's disconnected from the source, which is called life. It's disconnected from the vine. And now it's removed from the vine. Death had begun to incur. The process of dying began for that piece of fruit, even though it doesn't look dead, but put it on the ground for a while. What happens? It rots away. Why? Because it's not connected to the source. And if they could eat from every tree, then that means when they pulled all the fruit from whatever tree they wanted, guess what? That fruit doesn't start dying because it's life in it. That's amazing. You mean it's disconnected from the source, but it's still alive? Yeah, because the source lives inside of it. Right? Life lives inside of there. That's why Jesus says you will never die. What are you talking about? Your body, doesn't it die? But that's not the true you. The true you is the spirit, which is life. And that life never dies. Right? You understand? So, there's something about this tree of Da'ath, which when you pluck its fruit, there's something about death in that fruit. There's something about death because that fruit was never meant to be plucked. That tree's fruit was never meant to be plucked. It was not a choice. They were not given a choice. Yahweh didn't say, choose the life tree or choose the death tree. He said, all of the trees, life included, eat freely, enjoy, have as much as you want. But that one, don't pick. Don't pick it because it's the death tree. But Eve not only picked this fruit off that tree, you got to remember something. God didn't say you can't touch the fruit. Eve said it. What you hear God telling Adam is, but the day But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Eve is the one, when she was having this conversation with the liar, the serpent, she's the one that said that God said, we can't eat that fruit. We can't even touch it. She added the word touch, which, you know what? That's a lot of wisdom there, Eve. Maybe if you can't eat it, maybe you shouldn't even touch it, but that wasn't the command. You can touch it all you want, but once you pluck it so that you can take a bite of it and consume it into yourself for your own desires, your own desires, because she looked at it and it was a delight to her eyes. And so what did she do? Just like a flower. How beautiful. I'm going to pick that thing so I can bring it home and look at it while it dies. So I can watch it slowly die. That's not why I brought it there. I wanted to watch it while it was still pretty. Yeah. And Eve, maybe she didn't want to bring death into the world by giving it to her husband. Because it says that sin entered through one man, sin entered the world, and death through sin. So through that one man, because he's the seed planter, right? He's a seed planter. So through his seed, death, sin, and death, they go hand in hand. It's a package deal. So Eve plucks this fruit. Look at that pretty thing. I want to take it home to me. And she disconnected it from its source. Sure, it might have been the tree of death, the oath, knowledge of good and evil, but it didn't activate. It didn't become what it's known as, the oath, until it was partaken from her. She didn't know death. She only knew life. She only knew good, but she didn't have the knowledge of either, because she couldn't differentiate what death and life were, because all she knew was life. But when she pulled that fruit and killed it, maybe it didn't look like it died in her hand, so maybe she still wasn't understanding death, but that thing had begun dying. Do you understand? That fruit began to die. And when she bit into that fruit for her own pleasure, and it was forbidden, well, she broke something, a commandment. So guess what? She did what the commandments say. It doesn't say don't kill. The commandments say don't murder. And she now partook in murdering, because it was forbidden to take this thing's life from it. But it wasn't life. It's a tree of death, but it was connected to a source, and that fruit never died. It was alive. I'm sure it didn't rot away on its vine while it's connected to the vine. It would stay alive. But she pulled its fruit. And once she did, that piece of fruit was now known as Da'ath, D-A-A-T-H, death, because it started dying. And when she partook of it, the process of dying surely began. And she gave some to her husband. And when he ate it, death entered in. Sin was that they disobeyed the command. God didn't say you have a choice. Eat of the tree of life and all the other trees, or eat of death. But I suggest you don't eat death, because the day you do, the process of dying will begin. No, he commanded them. He commanded the man, you shall not. That doesn't sound like free will to me, what people call free will. That sounds like I am not giving you a choice on this. But Adam did make a choice, and so did Eve. So I suppose he gave them the ability to choose. But he didn't speak choose to them. That's something they came up with on their own. So if I turn to the book of Leviticus, chapter 7, verse 16, let's just go over this. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow offering is a nadar offering. It's a promise. That's what a vow is. It's a promise. It's an oath. So you're making, this is a vow. This is an oath. This is a promise. So if the sacrifice of his offering, by the way, is korban in Hebrew, it's something brought to the altar. So the sacrifice you bring to an altar is a promise that you are offering. And it says, or a free will offering. Okay, so now we have the word free will in the Bible. And I could keep on reading this scripture. It goes really deep. Maybe I'll just read it. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow offering or a free will offering, it shall be eaten on the day that he offers his sacrifice. And on the next day, what remains of it shall be eaten. Let me just cover this super quick here. Okay, but it's powerful. A sacrifice offering or the free will offering, it shall be eaten on the day that he offers his sacrifice. When it says he offers, right there after the word he offers and before it says his sacrifice is the Hebrew words or letters Aleph and Tav. So it's the Hebrew letters Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Tav, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Interesting. Jesus says, I am the first, I am the last. I'm the beginning, I'm the end. I am the Alpha and the Omega. That's Greek. In Hebrew, I am Aleph and I am Tav. I am Aleph Tav. I am Alpha and Omega. When you offer Aleph Tav as a sacrifice, and on the next day, what remains of it shall be eaten. So listen, you shall eat. It shall be eaten on the day that he offers Aleph Tav, his sacrifice. So let's just translate this into something a little more easy to understand. It shall be eaten. It shall be. It shall be. This is a command. It's not a, if you want to. No, this is another command. It shall be eaten on the day that he offers Jesus his sacrifice. And on the next day, what remains of it shall be eaten. Selah on that. In other words, consume it all. Consume it all. when you partake of Jesus, you once partake of his sacrifice. Now, what remains for us is keep partaking of that bread and that wine or grape juice or whatever you use for it. Keep on partaking, because you don't need to keep on eating his sacrifice. You're just declaring what he has done, and it's a remembrance of him. Do this in remembrance of me. So the thing is, the entire thing shall be eaten, meaning don't just take a little taste of Jesus and go away. No, that's called tasting of him. But if you want to partake of the whole thing, that is consuming him, consuming all of it into you, right? That entire sacrifice. Don't just taste and see he's good. Don't touch and see that he's good. Partake and consume of all of it. He's our tree of life. You understand? He is our tree of life. Jesus died on 2 dead pieces of wood. Yes, he died on a tree that was plucked from its source, and death had begun. So these 2 pieces of wood represent the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Good and evil. You understand? One tree. Cut that one giant piece of wood in half. It's still of the same tree. 2 pieces of wood of the same source. Just like the number 11 looks like 2 fingers, 2 number 1s, but they are one because they're the same. You and the Spirit of the Lord are one. Oh, but it looks like 2. You're one. Same substance, spirit. Jesus is nailed to a tree of death because it was not in the ground in its roots. Otherwise, it would look like a tree of life. If he would have been nailed to the tree of life, his body never would have died, because he's connected to life. But the tree of life and the tree of death surely were both there at the cross, at that altar. That altar. Because the tree of life was nailed to that tree of death. And the tree of life is Yeshua HaMashiach. Back to this free will word. Free will offering. In Hebrew, this free will is mentioned 26 times. Is the word nedaba. Nedaba. It means voluntary or willingly. Voluntary offering, willingly. Voluntary. If you're volunteering for something that you're not getting paid for, but you're volunteering anyway, you're doing it because you made a choice. You made a choice to do something. I choose to do this job for free. I don't want payment. I'm going to volunteer to help out. All right? That's called free will. But it's different than the free will we've been told about. Because the free will we've been told about is somebody pulling the word free will out of the Bible, saying, see, free will is in the Bible. See, I have it right here. It's in my hand. See that word? Free will. I'll put it back in the Bible. Don't worry. I'm putting it back, but I just borrowed it for a second so that you guys can see. Here it is. It's free will. I'm not plucking it from its source. Don't worry. I'm not plucking it from its source called the Bible. I just didn't pluck free will out so death would incur. No, I'm just magnifying it. I'm just magnifying that word. You see, there it is. It's magnified. Boom, put it back. And they take that word free will and they say, God gave us free will. And he gave Adam and Eve free will. And so when they went to the two trees in the garden, they had free will. And God gave them the choice. Eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or eat of the tree of life. But if you do eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the process of death will begin. But I'm giving you the choice. No, he didn't. He didn't give him a choice. He gave Adam a command. It's a thou shalt not. There is no choice. Did the 10 Commandments give mankind a choice? Does it say, thou shalt not murder? If you don't want to. Because if he said if you don't want to, that's a choice. Or, murder if you want to, but I'm saying you shouldn't. That's a choice. No, he didn't say that. He said thou shalt not. That's a command. God commanded Adam. And Adam told his wife Eve. And maybe Adam's the one that added to it. Hey, Eve, don't eat of that tree. And by the way, don't even touch it, okay? Because maybe he just wanted to make it really, really, really sound forbidden. So don't even touch it. And maybe she repeated that to the serpent. But the command wasn't don't touch. But touching does not include plucking. Because plucking is killing. And when you kill out of your own selfish desires, your own lust, that's what it is. It's lust. And when you kill out of lust, you're a murderer. And Eve murdered in the garden. Eve murdered. And Adam partook, which makes him a murderer as well. Because, let's face it, if you're the driver and you got a passenger in your vehicle and you stop in front of a bank and that passenger gets out, goes in there, robs the bank, jumps in your car, and you guys take off together, well, I'm the driver. I'm not the bank robber. He did it. He's the one that robbed the bank, not me. I was just driving. No, you're an accomplice. You co-operated. Co-operated. Like a number 11. Those are two number ones cooperating, reflecting each other. As this one is, so is this one. So as that driver is, so is the passenger. You're both guilty. As the passenger is, so is the driver, I should have said. You're both guilty. You both are bank robbers. Adam took part in murdering. Because they took a life that they weren't allowed to take. There was no choice. You can eat of life, but don't kill it. Because it's death when you do that. And Not only did you kill it and start death through killing, but guess what else? You murdered. Because you weren't allowed to do that. There was no free will. There was no choice. I didn't give you the choice of murder. I said, thou shalt not, and you did it. I don't care if somebody out there wants to water this down and say, what's the big deal? We're talking about a piece of fruit. Come on, we eat fruit all the time. We eat, we do this, we do that. Yeah, we do. So we eat death fruits too, because they're plucked from the source. But that's all outside of the garden, you guys. That's outside of the garden. We're talking about in the garden right now. Now people can go outside of the garden, and now you got, I guess, what you could call free will. Choose life, choose death. It's your choice now. God says, I'd rather you choose life. So yeah, we make choice. I suppose we have what's called free will, but I still don't get it. I don't use that word ever. You will never have a conversation with me and I will say, oh yeah, we're people, we have free will. And I will never say that on my videos. We have free will. There's things I just don't say. I'm not saying I say everything perfect, but I'm trying to train my tongue from speaking things just to speak them out there or repeat what other people say, because they've been teaching this stuff for years and since I could ever remember. We have free will. The Jehovah's Witnesses taught that we have free will, but you better not use it. Otherwise, there's some condemnation that's going to come with that. You're going to get punished. You're going to get disfellowshipped from talking to anybody else or associating with anyone else if you exercise that free will. So keep it to yourself. God did not intend for Adam and Eve to have a choice between life and death. He commanded them to not partake of that tree, because they would begin the process of dying. The serpent didn't pull the fruit out of the tree. He didn't force them to do something. She was deceived by him. Just like he deceives so many people. And perhaps that's why people choose death instead of life. Because it's a choice. You can choose to listen to the serpent. You can choose to listen to the Holy Spirit, which is God, which is the voice of Christ. You can choose the tree of life because he opened up that way back into the garden for us so we could go to the tree of life, partake of its truth, and the process of living begins. Because you just partook of life, so the process of living begins. And all this death that was in you starts to exit out. Maybe it doesn't go quickly enough like how we want for it to. You know, our timing's different. We want things so quick, and so do I. But for some reason, just like if you were to slowly fill up that flat tire that you poked a hole in with a needle, you know, you plug that tire up, you cover that spot with the hole, and then you start to fill it back with air. Sure, you want the air to instantly be in there because, man, this is so time consuming. It's taking efforts. I don't like it. I got other stuff to do. But you started filling that tire back with air. The process of filling has begun. So you and I, we have the Holy Spirit in us, which is life. And we want that filling to flow all the way through every little cell in our bodies, don't we? Including our mind, including our thoughts, including our souls. It's our job to renew our minds. That's soaking our minds into life. If life was a big bath, and you just put your mind in there and soak it to where it becomes marinated until your mind is so marinated with life, which is truth, by the way. Truth and life are the same. Because life and truth are in Christ. That life and truth is in you. You can renew your mind by marinating in that. So much that, like when a cucumber marinates in pickle juice, they become one. And when you take that cucumber out of the pickle juice, when it has marinated long enough, it was a process. I know. You wanted the pickles faster. Come on, tastes like pickle, but it took some time. But when it finally became that pickle, that means the juice and the cucumber have become one. You cannot squeeze that cucumber and make it free from all that pickle juice to where it tastes like a plain old cucumber again. That cannot happen because they have become one. They are marinated. The cucumber has marinated into the pickle juice. You and I can marinate our minds in what is called life, what is called truth, coming from the source, which is God, which is the Spirit in you, which was given to you by Christ because it's His Spirit too. And now your spirit here is touch and become one through intimacy. That's a great choice to make, since we have the ability to choose. That's a great choice to make, and it's free. Come take life's water free. Wow, life is water too. Life is a fruit. Life is water. What else is life? Well, guess what? There's a breath of life. Do you think when God blew into Adam's nostrils, He blew oxygen in there? He didn't breathe oxygen into Adam's nostrils. He didn't blow oxygen into Adam's nostrils. He breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. There's a difference. And when Adam partook through disobedience, not choice, although he made a choice, but there was no choice, there was no free will about this. God did not give it to him, but obviously He created Adam with the ability to choose. Just like He created the ability of good and evil. But evil was never a choice, although someone chose it, like that serpent. But going back to Adam, the day he took that fruit, and he had in him the breath of life. Life, not oxygen, life. When that fruit entered in, it was like that needle going into a tire. And life just started slowly leaking out of Adam until he almost made it to that 1,000 years. Oh, almost there. Oh. Not quite, buddy. That's why Christ is going to reign for 1,000 years, because nobody made it that far. One man, Methuselah, he got close. He got closest. Oh, so if this over here, this line right here, and here's another line. Methuselah starts off, and he's walking his course. 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 Oh my goodness, here I go. 900 years old. 900. Oh, there's the 1,000 year mark. It's right there. Oh, oh. There's a reason there's something called the millennial reign. Maybe we should talk about that sometime. All right, guys. I love you. God bless you. I hope you have a great day. And we'll talk to you soon.